you cannot fight fire with fire all the time. And I understand that, there's a need for the criminal justice system. We got that. But there's a need for restorative justice just the same.
That was T.O. Hardiman, the Executive Director for Violence Interrupters and an expert on restorative justice. Also on a journey of recovery, T.O. has 30 years of sober time, so it's worth your while to listen to this. I'm your host, Martin John, the Recovery Mentor, and I want to welcome you to the Recover Yourself podcast, where we address topics you'll face while on our journey to recovering yourself. This podcast is all about expanding the definition and scope of addiction and recovery, so everyone has the same opportunities of recovering themselves. So no matter where you are on that journey, there is a place for you here. Tio and I are going to talk all about restorative justice today. So if that term is unfamiliar to you, you'll know all about it and all the good it's doing in the world today by the end of this episode. I didn't know how this episode was going to go, but Tio and I ended up going over each of the 12 steps and how they relate to personal and community growth. Restorative justice allows for forgiveness and redemption and includes victims, perpetrators, and the community at large in the process. When I see this laid out in front of me, I can't help but think about how within each of us, we have all of these entities. We have a victim who is hurt and feeling hard done by. A perpetrator, or the part of us that knowingly or otherwise flirts with those things we want to get away from. And then there are all the other aspects of our lives that can be considered community. Our relationships, family, jobs, that person we are in front of others. It is never easy for a victim to face someone who has harmed them in any way. But if we're wanting to recover ourselves, we have to do exactly that within ourselves. These two aspects of ours have to be able to embrace. I hope you get a lot out of this episode and are able to see how to step up your step work or how you might begin some restorative recovery work within yourself. Tio, thank you so much for joining me. I'd love to just start chatting about what is the kind of technical definition and what does it look like on the ground, restorative justice?
Yeah, first and foremost, I'm happy to be here on your show with you. And secondly, more like the technical definition of restorative justice, it's all about repairing the harm that was caused by someone, transgressing on another person, or, causing bodily harm or causing some type of emotional harm or some type of harm, and placing more of an emphasis on the victims of crime. Because a lot of times in the criminal justice system, what happens, a guy might get caught for hurting somebody or taking a life, and next thing you know, they go to prison for the rest of their lives, but the victims continue to have to live with the aftermath of losing a loved one, and nobody's really working in the field of trying to restore and bring people back together in a holistic sense of just trying to heal the entire situation, in other words. So just to be more technical, it's all about repairing the harm that was caused. That's what restorative justice is all about, and basically restoring the entire community as a village, opposed to restoring just the criminal justice part of a problem, okay?
I just want to chime in really quick in the middle of this, just because, I can't tell you how much it hurts my heart when I see the families of victims. They don't get closure because someone gets in trouble.
Yes, and that's my main point I would like to stress. So if I don't say anything else, I want to make it clear that restorative justice aims to repair the harm and actually help restore the victims to some sense of security, some sense of belonging, because for far too long, victims and family members, when some people's families, some person's family member has been taken away or hurt in a bad way, the family have to live with that stuff for the rest of their lives. And so it's important to help, because a lot of people don't see the family members when they're at home reminiscing about looking at a picture of their loved one, when they have to reminisce about all the hurt and the pain and the life they spent with that loved one. So that's what restorative justice aims to do. And then also on the offender side, I've facilitated a victim offender, restorative justice conferences sometimes, and basically the offenders need to heal as well. As crazy as it sounds, maybe years later, the offenders need to bring some sense of being normal to themselves and their minds, because a lot of times people make bad decisions at different times, but if you don't try to rehabilitate the mind of those offenders, they get back out and they repeat the cycle all over again. So with restorative justice, working on both fronts, just imagine if a person can really repent and really take a real deep examination of oneself and how they cause harm to somebody, and then really began to turn away from some of the way they were thinking, through the restorative justice process, because you cannot fight fire with fire all the time. And I understand that, there's a need for the criminal justice system. We got that. But there's a need for restorative justice just the same. And some people on the street level, some people think that restorative justice kind of weak on crime. That's not the goal of restorative justice. If you commit the act of murder, first-degree murder, restorative justice does not try to say that you don't need to go to jail. You need to go to jail, spend your time there. But during the process of you being incarcerated, we can work with you to help you kind of, change some of your ways and start thinking out of the box and say, okay, yeah, I committed this crime, but I hurt somebody. I harmed somebody. I'm paying for it, but right now I need to really pay it forward now and make sure that I don't reoffend, number one, and make sure that if I can help bring closure to that family, that's my duty. That's my duty as a perpetrator or an offender, because them offenders, they don't know how these people are hurting out there. They don't see, like, say, the aftermath. They don't see the collateral damage. See, what happens a lot of times, offenders will, let's say I'll use myself as an example. Let's say, unfortunately, somebody decided to shoot me and take my life. I'm part of an extended family. I have kids. I have my mother, relatives and friends that love me. So when you take me away from that equation, what you're doing is that you're taking me away from all those people that care about me and people that depend on me. Offenders don't even think about that, especially for those who commit the act of first-degree murder, which is premeditated murder, okay? Yes, and some people, and don't get me wrong here, some people are incorrigible. Some people cannot be rehabilitated. But restorative justice aims to really, really work with the people that really want to change and people that want to bring closure. Because, I hear these stories all the time, how people, they were raised in a bad environment. I was raised in a bad environment, okay? And I understand all the pros and cons. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, Hispanic, Asian, or whatever. We all were kind of raised in the way we were raised. But that does not justify you taking advantage of somebody. It doesn't justify that. But through restorative justice, you can take a look at the error of your ways, and as community leaders, facilitators in the restorative justice process, we can help you overcome some of that thinking, and then you can kind of make a decision. I need to repair this situation. I really need to repair this. And so restorative justice works on a lot of different fronts, not just in the criminal justice system. There are healing circles in the restorative justice process where people can come together and heal from whatever they're dealing with. It's very emotional. I've organized and facilitated healing circles with gang members before. And I saw these guys break down and cry in these healing circles because of the trauma they've experienced just being out there on the streets, and they never really got a chance to express, in a healing circle what they're dealing with. So
when I look at restorative justice, I look at a lot of different parts having to come together and be strong enough to face those other parts. Now, you're someone coming out of recovery as well, is that right?
Yeah, yes, indeed.
Can you compare how a 12-step program and the different steps that take place in a 12-step program for an individual, how that has been translated within the modality of restorative justice?
Well, that's a profound question, young man. I appreciate it. So, the 12-step process is is beneficial to the restorative justice process as well, especially dealing with yourself one day at a time, so to speak. Because, the first step talks about being powerless. You admitted you were powerless, and your life had become unmanageable, so to speak, right? So right there, that's a surrender step, that you already know that you really don't have the power you think you have. Whether it be drugs, whether it be the sex addiction, whether it be any gambling addiction, you have to admit,
or even your image. Right? When we
you-
start looking at restorative justice, your image on the street, how other people see you, your addiction to your own emotional state, your addiction to the desires that you have.
Yes, and that's what I'm talking about. So, and then as they say in recovery, drugs are just a symptom of the overall problem. So now once you're clean and sober, now you can begin to delve into what else is going on in your life that led you to think you need to pick up a drug. Okay, so that's restorative in itself, okay? And then, the second step talks about being restored to sanity. So you have to admit the fact that you were kind of crazy out there, whatever you were doing. So insanity is really, practicing the same behavior expecting different results, okay? So basically in the restorative process, it's all about self-admission. You have to admit these things, just like I was talking about some of the perpetrators, some of the offenders. You have to admit first that you were wrong for what you did. And how do we restore this within you? Because, you know, you can be restored. Because at the end of the day, you have to meet your maker like all of us. And, you know, you have to answer to your maker. So I would rather answer to my maker and not be a creep and not try to deal with forgiveness. See, forgiveness and putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, understanding the pain they have to go through. So the third step is about make a decision to turn your will and life for the care of God as you understand, you know, your higher power. Mm-hmm. So right there, you're giving up your power to a degree, but that takes preparation, it takes meditation, and it takes the willingness to let go of pride and ego and humble yourself and say, you know what? I need to be led by a higher power, because when I'm trying to lead myself, it doesn't turn out right. And you got perpetrators all over the world that are sitting in a jail cell right now that know what I'm talking about, because they want to do their own thing their way instead of just, and you know, all of us have another sense that kicks in our mind that tells us, look, maybe you shouldn't do that one there.
And a higher power can also be seen as our community.
Right.
Like when we talk restorative justice, we got to bring people together to care about the whole. And yes, we have free will, but we also have, the power to work together. Yes.
And that's what restorative justice is all about, is bringing an entire community together. That's why I spoke about it early on. It's a holistic approach. Okay. Instead of just throwing people away, they have to return to society. So what can we do to make them whole while they're incarcerated? I've had a chance to watch videos and facilitate a restorative justice process with a lady whose daughter was killed by a young man that's in the Illinois Department of Corrections. I set up a meeting with her to meet this guy, and she needed to do this in order to bring closure. And the guy was her daughter's boyfriend. He took her daughter's life. He was convicted of second-degree murder. It wasn't premeditated, but I tell you something, that was one of the wow, that was the experience was like something I couldn't even describe, really, because the guy that killed her daughter, he broke down in tears, not because he's locked up, because of his actions. And the mother thought that he did not really care about what he did, because when he was convicted, he kind of made a mockery of the situation in the courtroom. You know, his pride and his image kicked in, like, you know, what the hell your daughter did, you know, she should have stayed with me. And, you know, he was real antagonistic, right? But when we went to visit this guy 2 or 3 years later, he was very remorseful, and you can see that he was very sincere, and it helped his mother, it helped the girl's mother bring closure, and she embraced the young man. And what he did say also, which was profound, he said if they would let him out of jail, he still wouldn't leave, because he's right where he needs to be, because he took that girl's life. Okay, now that was profound, because, and I believe he was very sincere, because, you know, you couldn't get past that. So I'm grateful he agreed to meet with the mother, and she met with him. Couldn't get past the emotions, though. It was tough.
Yeah, and like how proud one has to be that person who can just face themselves.
Yeah, it was really something, I tell you. So that's what was, and another thing now, the mother did embrace him. That didn't mean she forgave him all the way, but she got a chance to bring closure in her life, and they actually write each other now.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that's all happening within each of us, in terms of like those of us in recovery and those of us trying to recover more of who we are. Both of these people, the mother that wants to love us, but also the punitive like teenager that wants to like damage us. How do you see the difference between like recovering from and recovering to? Like, if I were to say that's a language that I use, but in restorative justice, I look at like both of these aspects need to be addressed. And within recovery, I look at, within our lives, I look at both of these aspects having to be addressed as well, right? Like, we got to get away from things so we can think clearly. And then once we can think clearly, like this man in jail, he was able to address himself, which made him face himself. So when I say, how do you see the difference between these two aspects of recovering?
Yeah, but basically, as you know, as for example, in the fourth step, it talks about taking a fearless, more, inventory yourself. You know, we just put it out there a little bit, because I know the steps like the back of my head. So the fourth step, taking that inventory, right? But you need a sponsor. So everybody needs a sponsor. And what happened here is that the young man did tell me that some older prisoners helped him reckon with the error of his ways. And some of the older brothers in prison got a chance to really dig deep with him. And these, you know, they had their own informal, like, restorative justice peace circles in prison, you know, and it was really magnificent because they helped this young man acknowledge who he was and like some of the issues he had. And, you know, a lot of things were uncovered, you know, so to speak. So when you talk about a fourth step, I use this young man as an example. He began to realize how messed up he was. So he actually had to make a list of his assets and his liabilities, right? And he shared that with me, and he didn't even know he's talking recovery talk. But he said he took a deeper look at himself with some of the brothers, and it exposed on one end he had some good qualities, and on the other end he was all messed up the way he was raised, the type of thinking, the way he thought. So when you talk about recovering from, you have to recover. Like, for example, now this may sound crazy, but I'll just be straight up. If a young person is raised to be racist, right? If that person is raised by a racist family, he's 2 or 3 years old, now he's 20, he's been hearing all these bad things about other cultures and stuff all his life. You cannot really blame that person because the way they were taught, okay? But once a person comes into the light of the day and of the universe of humanity, then you can take a look at blaming that person to a degree. But understand this, people have to detox from everything. They have to unlearn everything they've learned. So you can't expect a person to just change overnight. So that fourth step, you know, you work, you know, with your sponsor, and then you work to, you know, make that list and just deal, you know, probe yourself, deal with yourself. And then you begin to minimize some of those things that brought you down, you know, that you have to kind of, we'll get into that later on in the steps, you know, dealing with defects and, you know, exact nature of your wrong stuff, right? But this is the thing. The fifth step talks about admitting to yourself, another person, the exact nature of your wrongs. Okay, now that's key, because it's not for you to go on the mountaintop and share with everybody. You have somebody you can trust, confide in, to basically, you know, share, because you got to get this stuff off your chest. Because in a comical note, it takes all day to look tough 24 hours a day, you know. You know what I mean? That's a lot of work. Hey, man, looking like this all day. Hey, man, what's happening? You know?
Yeah, I can't smile. I can't show that because I was taught that this is what it's like to be a man. This is what it's like to be something. And the thing is you are so much, you as an individual are so much more than any of those images, any of those labels, any of those, anything. Yes. And you're going to be stronger than you could ever be but you have to face that.
Yes, and that's what I'm talking about. So in that fifth step, you face it, talk about, you know, some of those exact natures of your, you know, your wrongs, and just deal with it, address it, man. You know, just confront it head on, because if you really want to get better, it's all about working on yourself internally anyway. So now recovering from and recovering to, so you have to recover to basically that transformation, you know what I mean? And accepting the transformation, you know? Yeah. Because it's easy to kind of fall back on what's normal for you, right? Your old habits. It's easy just to go back and say, nah, it's not working, like with me. But in that fifth step, once you process that step with a sponsor and kind of, you know, get that stuff out there, because, you know, someone needs to know what you're dealing with, somebody. And then you get into that sixth step when you ask to remove all your defects of character, because defects can rob you of ongoing recovery, and defects can rob you of the restorative justice process. You know, you can, let's say you're clean from drugs, but, you know, your line is still there. You know, you're still a thief. You're still you know, like messing over, you're a player, you know, all the stuff that come along with it.
We say pissing clean, living dirty.
There you go, my man. I love it. So you know what I'm talking about. So those defects will rob you of ongoing recovery. Now, this is profound here. I found this out during my recovery process. You might find yourself hurting more people while you're clean than the number of people you hurt when you were using. So that's what you mean by pissing clean and living dirty.
That's right.
Because a lot of people use their past to justify their actions. Well, I haven't really recovered from that. Now, that's one of my vices. You know, I got to deal with that. And as I get into the seventh step, I talk about that a little bit. But the main thing is this here: the defects will rob you. That's why the recovery process is so close to the restorative justice process. because what you have to recover to is accepting the fact that you're not perfect. And you made a lot of mistakes because when you was out there using, you probably stepped on a lot of people, but you mainly stepped on yourself a lot. So you have to recover to the new you.
Yeah. Absolutely, man.
Yeah,
Well,
because it's not easy.
That's the big thing that I think gets this conversation. So the Recover Yourself podcast is all about bringing in this conversation of recovering to, because recovering from it, like I don't ever want to kind of play down the work that has to go into recovering from, but it really is the beginning.
Yes.
Because running away from something is how I see recovering from. I'm recovering from. What am I looking at back there? Recovering to is about moving forward, having goals, having things to go forward to. And that's why, talking with people like yourself and the other people that I talk to, it's always about like people that have some long-term recovery that understand that stuff that I'm leaving behind wasn't who I was.
Yes.
I'm going toward who I am, and I'm constantly changing. I used to ask people like, when was the first time you understood yourself as thinking clearly?
Yes.
Because I always say when we're thinking clearly is when we know things are going to change. And when those people in restorative justice are at the beginning and they're holding on to these old ideas, they don't think that they're ever going to change. And then lo and behold, 2 years later, they're breaking down and hugging the victim's mother.
See, that's very important, young man. So that's basically that 6th step, dealing with them defects and really doing what's called a self-inventory. So you can like pick, like you can catch stuff, like the red flags will go off and you can catch it. But it takes reinforcements by working them steps diligently, every day, really, one day at a time. And then the 7th step talk about humbly to ask God to remove your shortcomings, because some of our shortcomings we will go to the grave with, okay? Dealing with that situation. Shortcomings are rough. And like I say, I always put myself on display as an example. I'm not young as I used to be, of course. We live in our life, but I always had that player mindset. I had to have multiple women. I'm the man. All that old BS. And just laughing today. My eyebrows, they're cool, but I had to work on my eyebrows almost every day. Because it's like an image thing. They start spotting on me and stuff, and I want to go out looking close to perfect all the time because I want to stay this image. I want to stay this ladies' man type of mindset. But I have to learn. And the reason I'm mentioning this because I'm hoping that it's not a shortcoming of mine. A defect is a defect that you can work on, a glaring defect, and do your best to get rid of the defect, right? Or just to let it go. Put it like this, let it go. But a shortcoming is something that's just really so hard to get over, and some of us will go to the grave with some of our shortcomings. And that's why restorative justice and recovery, they run parallel. They run parallel for sure. Parallel rather. So now we're just going to move. This is where restorative justice really kicks in. This is the part I was waiting to get to.
Yeah.
So the 8th and the 9th step. 8th step talks about make a list of the people you harmed and become willing to make amends. They're talking about just making a list now. Because see now, as a sponsor and as a person that's been around for a little while, you don't work on the 8th step right away. It takes time. Like the brother in jail, it took him 2 years to come around.
That's right.
And talk about himself. So when you make that list, and that's all about repairing the harm now. You're making a list of the people you harmed. I can remember vividly harming, not physically, but mentally, emotionally. I'm in a relationship with this lady and not being honest with her. I'm messing around with another lady. She found out her heart is broken. See, when you break somebody's heart, it's not cool. My heart has been broken a couple of times too. Don't get me wrong. And it's not easy getting over a heartbreak. I'm talking some man talk now, because I love my women,
Yeah.
And so the thing about it is that going through that process, so as you talk about that 8th step and making that list, family members you had harmed, even some people that have kids, their kids are grown now, and they were not there for those kids, for their kids. And now the kids have all these issues with the parents. So you have to make that list. And then the 9th step talks about making direct amends, except when to do so would injure them or others. Now, the reason I remember all the steps like I remember them now is because, man, I was involved in so much service work. I read the basic text 24 hours a day, sponsored people, all kinds of work in recovery, right? So the 9th step is all about, some people may not want to hear what you have to say. That's why they say, except one to do so would injure them or others. So you have to extend the olive branch, go talk to the person you had harmed, and basically just see, what they have to offer. Some of them might embrace you, but always be prepared as long as you tried, okay? And in my experience, when I made direct amends, 9 times out of 10, the people really appreciated it, because I was accused of being a little egotistical at one time and not caring so much and narcissistic, all that crazy stuff. And I have a heart. I never saw myself that way, but people from the outside saw me that way. And one young lady told me, she said, T.O., once of my years ago, she said, you're a nice looking guy, but you got an ugly personality. Ugly person. Hey, I'm being honest. I had to accept that. And I really did a self-evaluation behind that, because I thought I was the man. And she put me in my place, and I appreciate that, sister. And because she told me something about myself I had to look at.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I had to change my ways when it comes to relationships and everything, and improve my relationships with everybody. So if I even hang up the phone too fast nowadays, believe it or not, I'll call that person right back, say, did you have something else to say? Hey, because it's not about me,
That's right. That's right.
Okay. So,
and that's it's so important, I think, in the recovering to process, to understand that your experience is yours. And you have to, like, if that hurts somebody, you become aware of it, and then you deal with your shit. Like, it's not like, if I don't always have to apologize.
Yeah.
Like, I got to deal with my shit, and hopefully, if I do that, that's apology enough. Now, being able to face it,
right.
I want to be able to do that when that's possible again, when it doesn't hurt anybody, if we can just, because there are little things that happen every day. I'm facing every little thing I say and do. Like, I can't, you can't always police everything that you do. But when you get triggered, when you get shown yourself, or when you show yourself, when you get triggered because of something someone says, go back, do that work.
That's what I'm talking about. And then plus, this is like my personal stuff here. Like, my grandmother and grandfather raised me, and they passed away many years ago, but I don't want them looking down on me and looking at me like I didn't do what they taught me to do, in other words. I don't want them looking at me like I'm a creep or anything like that. So I'm mindful of the fact that they raised me. So I changed a lot of my ways, because whenever I leave here, I want to meet my grandmother and grandfather, let them know I kind of upheld, I upheld the legacy of our family on a higher level. So you don't want to be hypocritical. That's very important, but nobody's perfect. But I want to just say this about the 9th step. I got a chance to make direct amends to several people, and they embraced me, and I appreciate it. That's what restorative justice is all about, because once the healing process kicks in, now the people that you may have harmed, they feel better, you feel better. Now you can move on, and you can feel a little bit cleaner about yourself, because there's no sense. It's always better to be clean. Don't get me wrong. On your worst day, be clean,
Yeah.
But you can, like, say, be clean from drugs, but dirty in your thinking. So there's no justification. I don't play games with recovery, because defects can rob you of ongoing recovery, because you did not address your most glaring defects, and whatever it might be, whatever. Okay.
Yeah, it's not like I can't tell you how much I have to remind people. I don't care how much time you have. It's about the mindset.
That's what I'm talking about.
It is a completely different mindset. I no longer focus on not drinking anymore. I don't really focus on not using anymore. I focus on where I'm going, and where I'm going, that just isn't an option, just because where I'm going, it doesn't make sense.
Well, basically, like I said, I've been clean 30 years now. So about 10 or 15 years ago, I had to go rescue a young lady out of a drug house. Yeah. She was smoking cocaine, doing whatever she was doing. I would never do that again, because I must say, I never thought about using anything, but my stomach started flipping, and I started sweating and everything, just to be the smell, the burning of the cocaine, or the pipe, and all that crazy stuff. And plus, and then you got these images out here, because once God removes it from you, you don't go back around it, just stay away from it.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful God gave me the strength, because I didn't have to fall victim to anything. Like I said, I've been clean 30 years. I'm grateful. Plus, I practice the steps. I don't just talk about the steps. I practice the program each and every day. So my steps kicked in when I entered the house to save this young lady. Because I said, you got to come out here right now. No, you're not getting the last hit. I got to get, I'm about to cuss. I got to get the F out of here. You're not getting the last hit. I wasn't worried about using, don't get me wrong, but I didn't want to stay too long because I didn't like the faces and everything I was looking at. There was a few people up there doing, I just didn't want to be around it anymore. So basically, I'm grateful I worked the steps, and I'm humble enough to understand and accept this because the lower nature is always working against you, okay? They say once you get that gorilla on your back, even though you may be clean, that gorilla's doing push-ups trying to get you back involved in that crazy stuff. So the young lady's been clean now, except about 15 years since I went back to get her. So that's my way of paying it forward. And since I broke a few women's hearts in my life, and like I said, my heart has been broken too, I've healed from that process. And this might even sound comical. What I've done, this might sound real comical. Whenever I used to break up with a young lady since I've been clean, I used to purchase some Kentucky Fried Chicken, a bucket of chicken, and I would have a meeting with her family before I break it off. and the lady gets so mad at me, say, what are you doing, man? It's nobody else's business. But I want to make sure your family know why we breaking it off, young lady. So let's get us some chicken, eat some, like some mashed potatoes and gravy and some corn or something. And I would be smiling while I'm meeting with the people. But it's like, for me, it was a healing therapy for me, right? Yeah. But this would happen. It's not working for whatever reason. I don't want you all to think I'm a bad guy because both of us, basically had some issues,
Well, so yeah, of course,
it worked out for me, right?
Yeah, that's that's bringing in that like substance into it as well, where it's like, you know what, let's eat this because it's gonna make us feel a little better about all this.
Right. That's all I'm saying.
And that's and there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong with going towards that comfort food, that food that'll just kind of be like, hey, let's ease into this rather than it be of conflict.
Yeah, all conflict, right. And see, in the 10th step, it talks about taking a personal inventory every day, and when you're wrong, promptly admit it. See, therefore, you can avoid any future issues or problems you may have because you acknowledge you were wrong right here and now. Right here and now. Matter of fact, I don't even lie. I don't even feel good lying to nobody. I'm a grown man. I'm not about to explain or justify nothing. I'll tell you the truth. If you can't accept it, that's on you, but I'll try to help you process. But I would admit if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I plan to admit it. And on many occasions, my way of paying it forward is if I'm in a relationship and I'm wrong about something, I let the lady know. Look here, I'm dead wrong for not paying attention to you. I'm dead wrong for not being the best that I can be to you the way I promised you, in other words. So let's step back for a minute and allow me to take the lead and do the right thing now, Yeah. So for me, that's important when you're wrong. Now, not just in relationships, in any type of situation. If you're wrong, just be straight up.
Yeah, I have to sometimes I'll snap, I'll get triggered and I'll snap and I'll say a line that I know is just well out of the realm of my, like, who I am. Like, I didn't want to say that. I'm not the person. I am not the person that wants to say that because I know that's going to hurt you. And I said that specifically to hurt you. And I already feel bad about that. As it's coming out of my mouth, I can check my shit, stop and say, whoop, 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 whoop. Okay, I know that was escalating. I know what I was doing there. It came from a place where I was triggered. I just want to put that out there. I'll take whatever recourse happens because of that, but I want to just like lay it out that that's not what I was intending.
Yeah, because one day, just to give you another example, just life on life terms, I was in a federal FedEx place one day, and there's a young African-American young lady in there. She's around 22 or 23. Her supervisor was a Latino guy, and he had to be around 35 or 40. And I was in line, there's a few other customers in line, but I noticed he was talking down to the lady, like, wasn't no racial stuff, like just telling, didn't I ask you to get them boxes a few minutes ago? What'd you taking so long for? Just demeaning the lady. And, I'm T.O. Hardiman, and I'm listening to this guy. I'm trying to overlook it, not listening to whatever. But when I got up to the register, he just kept demeaning the lady. I say, my man, I don't know you, man, but, you talking to this lady in a serious way, man, demeaning her, disrespecting her. And, I ain't going to tell you the way I really said it to him, but you need to fall back, man, because I'm not saying nobody's perfect in the world, but if you're a supervisor, you need to act like one and stop trying to disrespect people in front of all these damn customers in here. You need to stop it, man. And I tell you, I kid you not, that Latino brother told me later on, he said he was having a bad day, but he told me he was in recovery. I didn't even know this. He said, you right, man. I need to do a self-check. He said, you right, man. He said, I don't know who sent you in here or why you talk to me, But I cussed him out. I'm not gonna fake with you.
No, I hear you. Yeah.
Cussed him out.
I'm guessing on that. Yeah.
I cussed him out, but and I told him to look at me because I started cussing him out. He put his head down. I say, no, you need to look at me the same way you talking down to that lady over there, right?
Mm-hmm.
He told me he put me to the side. When I started not to go to the side with him, he was like, just come. I mean, I'm not going to the side. The same way you disrespect, I'm disrespecting you. How you like it?
Yeah.
He said, man, I'm in recovery, man. I need some help. And so he won me over by staying recovery. He apologized to her in front of everybody. And so that was a situation. But the reason I mention it, because when you're wrong on a day-to-day basis, if you can just reflect and admit that you're wrong, you know, that can go a long way with people, a long way. Because once you start lying and disrespecting people, you have to keep up with the lies. You have to keep up with all the misinformation. So it can make your life much easier if you just remain humble, cooler heads prevail, and think before you act. Think before you act, okay? That's important.
Yeah. And what we're talking about here is like you can check yourself, and if you check yourself in the moment, you're going to look at yourself later.
Right.
Meaning you're going to continue to grow. Psychopaths and other people that just lie and they check themselves just to get favors.
Yes.
They don't grow, and you can see that real easily. But once you start doing that, what you're doing is you're really recovering your sense of self, that self that is connected to God, connected to your community, connected to your parents, connected to your grandparents, connected to everything.
Well, just like in the 11th step, we saw through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, right? So that's what my life is all about. I pray 3 times a day. I mean, religiously. I'm not even religious. I'm more spiritual, because they say religion is for people that don't want to go to hell. Spirituality is for people that have gone to hell and don't want to go back.
I love that. Go on.
So I've been there, okay, through the horrors of my addiction. But this is the thing. I pray like on a regular basis, and I just pray. And then when I get up from praying, I act like I prayed. See, that's important. Don't keep praying for God to remove something from you. And then you just forget you prayed, okay? And like I say, I'm transparent here talking to you. My biggest vice was the ladies' man. That was my biggest vice. And I'm much better now. I'm much better. And I'm not saying I was out there bad. What I'm saying is that if you're in a relationship with one woman and you're not telling her that you got another woman, you're wrong for that.
Yep.
Just be honest. All I'm saying is be transparent. The woman might say, you know what? Going about your business, then I'm not going to accept you like that. But my thing is just be honest. But and I'm not bad. I'm just talking about maybe 2 women that, this or that. But at the same time, if you're not honest, if you're not honest, it catches up with you. And what happens to guys like me later on down the road, if I've changed in that area because I love and respect. I actually, I said this too, and I just say this. Sometimes I inject a little comedy. I found out through my life experience, the woman is the boss. And I'm not saying that in a way where she run everything, but if a woman make you feel good, not sexually, but if she makes you feel good mentally, emotionally, and spiritually on a lot of different levels, then she has some power with you, okay? The sexual thing is cool. It's going to always be there. But my point is I have to uplift women. Whatever people believe in, that's their own, your belief system is your belief system. Whatever you do, that's your life. My life is the fact that was my issues that I had struggled with. So I'm trying to do it right. Yeah. And I used to blame it on the fact that my mother didn't raise me. My mother ran the streets before, and everybody I grew up around was street runners, players, and all that old stuff. I can't look at that and blame it on none of those type of things anymore. So I pray for God to improve my conscious contact with God, right, on a regular basis, and it's working for me. And I tell you, everybody that's going to listen to this here interview, I tell you something. Whenever I get right with God for 2 or 3 months at a time or one entire year at a time, my life always progressed. Whenever I did what God told me to do, my life always progressed. Whenever I stumbled, I get 2 steps forward, 10 steps backwards, because I'm not doing what God tells me to do. That's very important for people to understand. I'm willing to guarantee you, you get yourself right, improve your conscious contact with God, God will have your back all the time. Okay?
That's right.
And then last but not least, after having a spiritual awakening, we share these steps with other, suffering addicts, right? And so
that's what we're doing right now.
That's what I'm about to say. That's right. So we're sharing our experiences, we're sharing the steps, and it's been a remarkable journey for me because, I produced a video called Death of an Addict where I laid in a casket, and what I was trying to portray is that my addiction died, and while I was laying in the casket, I laid in there a little too long and started to feel good. I said, I got to get the hell up out of here. You know, so
that's what happens to each of us, right? Like when we die as who we were when we were in that space, and then but we continue on. And that's what happens in restorative justice as well, where this guy who had to apologize for his transgressions, he is now a different person. That person who he was is no longer.
That's what I'm talking about. So we're on the same page here. And in the 12 step, I share the message everywhere I go, you know, and I'm grateful that God has, you know, kept me here, you know, to be able to, you know, share the message. I attend a lot, you know, with COVID-19, we're not having a lot of conventions anymore as far as in person, but social media has helped me stay in contact with all of my friends worldwide, in recovery and in the restorative justice arena. So I feel blessed each and every day. I'm healthy. I'm just trying to keep myself relevant and do the best we can do out here to praise God. God comes first with me, and God knows my heart. So, you know, people can talk a good game, but God knows, God can see through you each and every minute of the day. So
That's right. That's right. Tio, I didn't expect to go through all 12 steps, but I am grateful that we did, man. And bringing it all back to restorative justice, because one thing I definitely want to be able to also introduce my audience to are things that are helping this planet, like, just continue growing. And 12 steps, as we can see, is all, you know, at the core of so much good stuff in the world, man.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you, bro, for having me on, and peace and blessings to you.
All right. I want to thank Tio, who is a beast out here in Chicago, working on the streets and trying to curtail the violence that we have, which many of you may have heard is a bit problematic at times. Restorative justice is one of those things we could all benefit from knowing a little bit about. And I hope this episode gave you a foundation of understanding that this is an option. When we talk about defunding the police, we're not talking about getting rid of police, but we're talking about allowing more people like Tio to do their work. Restoring our neighborhoods and having hard conversations is something this country is in dire need of. I want to take a minute and give a shout out to April Garfoli, who introduced me to the phrase pissin' clean and living dirty. And you should definitely check out my interview with her where we talked about treatment programs. You can find links to all that Tio is doing in the description of this episode. And I would love if you could rate and review this podcast and or leave comments for this episode to help me better create helpful content. Support the show at anchor.fm or support me and my work at Patreon, where you will get access to unedited content as well as writings and one-on-one access to supporter group portrait sessions with me. I host workshops regularly and take a limited number of one-on-one clients every month, so you should contact me when you're ready to work together. Thank you for listening to the Recover Yourself podcast, and until next time, keep recovering yourself.